everybody. Uh, it's Violet. I'm just sort of doing whatever today. I'm thinking that that's what I'm going to start doing on Wednesdays, is just releasing videos of me doing whatever. Hit him with the old Violet is bored. Which, it's not to say I don't find the Resident Evil games interesting, I do. I just have a crazy tendency to obsess and just hyper obsess with whatever I'm playing until I push myself too far, and before I know it, I'm causing myself actual pain when I never really meant to. Like, for instance, today I quite literally platinumed Resident Evil 3 Remake on my personal profile. And I played through the game, I think 7 times in the past 2 days. Just trying to, like, beat it. And also to, to beat it, but also to, like, get all of the points I needed to unlock certain things, and it's just a mess. This is me taking a break, I guess, and playing the last thing I ever would have expected me to be playing. Lights over there. Yeah, it's a village. I'm gonna go over there. Legitimately, Resident Evil is definitely a series I do love. But there are other series I love too, you know? Wait, is a dolphin giving me a boost? I think a dolphin might be giving me a boost. He sure is. Thanks, buddy. Like I said, I have problems where I will overfixate on stuff because I have... well, overfixate, hyperfixate, yeah. Because I have really bad ADHD, so... with Resident Evil 3 Remake, I literally, on my personal profile, platinumed it today, like I said, and getting through that final one, I was literally like an hour, and I think I was at an hour and 17 minutes when I beat the game on Inferno difficulty, which is what got me the platinum, finally. But I 100%ed the game as well. And the run on Nightmare as well as the run on Inferno just caused me actual emotional distress because they were so bad. I'm just really not good at dealing with that type of stuff. It hit me in the way some Souls boss fights do, but like, get out, get out, get out. I'm gonna die. I will be shocked if I live through this. Okay. Get out of the bed. I'm sleeping here. Thank you. How did I get a flower? I don't know. But yeah, the final fight with Nemesis in that game is designed so poorly. I decided to get back into it because it popped into my head of like, well, if I'm gonna be playing it, I should see if I can like give myself a newfound respect for the game, because there are a lot of things there are things about that remake that I just do not like, and it's hard to explain. Yes, I know, I'm eating all of your beets. What a shame. That game, I think it started with me seeing a video on like Resident Evil characters. They were saying like Resident Evil characters are schizophrenic, and it's because there are times where Resident Evil characters over the course of the series have been very inconsistent. The reasons varying often, but like when it got to Jill, it showed her from the original game, and I was just I forgot how long it had been since I had played that game, and I forgot just how different Jill was from like how you see her in Resident Evil 1 or how you see her in Resident Evil 5 or like Revelations or like any other game. And I decided I was gonna go through, I was gonna give myself a newfound love and respect for that game. And in a way, I think I did. But at the same time, I still can't justify telling somebody to get it. Because the game, good though it may be, is also at the same time just, it's a game that's supposed to be built on replayability, but at the same time there's barely any replayability to that game. Like, you have different difficulties, of course, that change up the game and how it goes. You do different like records and stuff to like gain points to buy stuff from the shop. And to the naked eye, somebody would be like, oh, well, this game has so much replayability. What are you talking about? It doesn't, though. Like, the only reason to replay the game is to either make consequent runs easier, well, consequent? Yeah, I think that's what I meant to say. I don't know. My brain is fried. It just, it's supposed to make those runs easier, and don't get me wrong, it does. It definitely does. But at the same time, even if it does make it more enjoyable, I found the only reason to replay that game is if you're trying to complete it, if you're trying to get a platinum. And I don't think that that should ever be the specific reason you're playing a game, unless it's what you do. Like, whether it be just like an itch you can't scratch, where you like see that the game's trophies aren't like mapped out yet, or like if it's something where you just look at it and you go, I kind of really want that platinum. Like, whether it be any of those things, like, you should never play a game just because you want the platinum. The game itself should feel rewarding based off of what it is. And Resident Evil 3 Remake does not give that. Like, it does not always feel rewarding as a game. The only time that I felt truly rewarded with that game was when I was playing through Carlos's first section in the RPD, and you literally, while you're going through, like, the game rewards you for knowing these things. Like, the game rewards you for knowing that it rewards you for knowing, like, oh, I know the save combination in the West office, which I have memorized, or like knowing the locker combos, like, even though it gives it to you, like, I know them, and that is rewarding to me. The idea of, oh, I can just use this information somewhere else instead of just using it in the one place I used it. And that's really cool, you know? So it just makes me sad when I play a game like that. What the hell is on your head? Oh, it's a mask. Probably goggles or something. It just... When there's a game I want to love, because I love the series it comes from, but the game itself disappoints me, it just feels hollow. And Resident Evil 3 Remake, a lot of the time to me, does feel hollow. I realized that I didn't hate Jill for how they wrote her. I realized I didn't hate Jill at all, because the remakes did with Jill what they've done with every character. They took a different path to get to the same place. And I respect that. And I also respect, like, that the team that made Resident Evil 3 Remake did not have a good amount of time to make it. They were given a year to make the game, because Capcom was trying to capitalize off of, like, the success of the 2 remake. So they were like, I want it done now. And that led to a game that is way shorter than it needs to be. The world record for beating that game without glitches or anything is 57 minutes and like some seconds. That's ridiculous. Most of the time, if people have a speed run like that, it's usually like that because they've used glitches. And buddy, you need to, like, leave me alone. But the reason, like, I can beat that game in an hour and a half. The game itself suffers because it doesn't have anything on the side to keep the game itself going. Resident Evil 2 Remake had Ghost Survivors, which at times, seemingly flawed though it may have been, Ghost Survivors is fun. And that's not even considering the fact that Resident Evil 2 Remake actually, like, already has, like, a side thing that can be done with it. Because you have the Like, you have, like, the fourth survivor. You have Tofu Survivor. Fourth Survivor just gives you a loadout and basically, like, just has you rush through an amalgamation of areas that you've already been through in the game, just starting from a different position. You play as Hunk, a Umbrella operative that was a part of the Alpha team, and his team went to retrieve Birkin's serum. And what ended up following was something awful. Birkin and his ego and his hubris couldn't let it go. So he pulled a gun on them. They killed him. But Hunk just wanted to get his team out. Birkin injected himself with the G virus because he couldn't let go of his creation. He couldn't handle the fact that it was being taken from him. And it cost him so much more. The T virus spread through the city with the rats. Like, you can see the rats in one of the videotapes, like, eating the virus from the vials that were smashed by Birkin. And while you look at it, you're just like, wow, what the hell? But yeah, the rats spread the disease through the city, and it just infected everyone. And then Hunk basically is hiding in the sewers, hiding away from anything that could cause him great harm. And then eventually he gets the call from the chopper pilot, so he makes his way out to leave. Hunk is an interesting character because he's a soldier. Like, his job is to do what Umbrella tells him. But Hunk is literally just like, has this really bad reputation because he always ends up being the last one alive anytime a team of his goes out. And it's led to a lot of people calling him Mr. Death. And honestly, sick of a moniker as that may be, it's rough. Oh, you've got to be kidding. Wow, I love that sound. Reminds me of playing OG RE2. But anyways, Hunk has to fight his way through the sewers and then into the police station, and then has to take like specific routes to escape. And it gives him like a loadout from the start that you have to deal with, and he has a lot, but at the same time, it's not as much as you'd think, because your resources go faster than you'd think. His is harder intentionally. And he even has to fight another Mr. X, like, on his way out. But his goal is to make it to the front gate, but everywhere he goes, the entrance is barricaded, or, like, the path is barricaded, so he has to find this really long way around. Tofu Survivor is just a harder version of the fourth Survivor, where you literally play as different types of tofu. and each has a different loadout. There's one that literally is just nothing but knives, and it's silly. Like, whenever the tofu gets bitten, like, chunks of tofu will just fly out everywhere, and he'll have, like, chunks of tofu missing. When he heals, like, he'll get his chunks back. But you have, like, one that's an explosive specialist and has a bunch of grenades and also a grenade launcher or a rocket launcher. But then you have Ghost Survivors, which was just, honestly, just an awe-striking idea. The idea of playing as these characters who died throughout the night, who didn't quite make it, and whose lives were cut short. The what if of playing as them to see what could have been is just so cool. Like, playing as Robert Kendo trying to escape the city because he realizes he has something to live for. The mayor's daughter, who dies at the hands of resident sociopath Brian Irons. Like, she kills him before he can kill her, and then she's trying to fight to the police station to get to her boyfriend, Ben, who is the reporter Leon meets in the jail cell, so they can escape together. And then you've got Ghost, who is a member of Hunk's team that died in the incident with Birkin. And, like, he finds the G-Virus sample and tries to escape with it. After that, once you've completed all of those, you unlock a final one called One Hell of a Sheriff, where you play as the sheriff from the beginning, like from the gas station, who dies in the very beginning. And this sheriff, his Ghost Survivor is different than the others. And the reason it's different is for one reason in particular. His Ghost Survivors is different because they make it a wave-based combat. Like, you have to survive through waves upon waves. Oh, that's a... Yeah. You have to survive through so many waves of zombies and, like, just varying different enemies. And it's such a cool idea. And it's such a good idea, just in general. Wow. But you go through, like, the Pale Heads, which you don't really deal with a whole hell of a lot in Resident Evil 2 Remake. But Pale Heads basically have regenerative properties and are near impossible to kill. So it's just a good time, in my opinion, to deal with them. You need higher caliber ammunition to stop them. So, like, Magnum, or, like, even other things like fire, or maybe even just like spark shot. Like, anything that will fry them, basically. But yeah, it's And even like the poison zombies from Robert Kendo's shtick, it's interesting. Like it's just a cool idea, and you have to kill 100 of them to survive and to win. And I think it's just inspired. Like it's a good idea, and is from what I remember, the DLC itself was free when it came out because it was just additional content for the game that they had released. Resident Evil 3, the original Resident Evil 3, had a bonus game mode. And what it was mercenary mode. And it was different from how it is now, but it was mercenary mode. Like you could play as Mikhail Victor, the leader of the UBCS squad. You could play as Carlos Oliveira, our plucky individual who helps us throughout Resident Evil 3 when we're playing as Jill. You could play as Jill. You could play as Nikolai, which is just cool. But when 3 released, they give you this awful free game with it that was multiplayer, and like I think they were trying to feed off of Dead by Daylight's popularity. That's what it was supposed to be, like was like a Dead by Daylight type thing, but it was not good. It was not fun. Like one person played as like this sort of like overlook, like this person who's like, oh, what's the name of the guy in each vault in Fallout? Basically like an overseer. That's what it is. It's basically like an overseer. They basically like monitor these survivors inside an Umbrella lab and are like throwing out traps and zombies and BOWs trying to kill them. It has everything on paper to be good, and then it just isn't. Buddy, I can't even with you right now. Please get away from me. But on paper, it had everything to be good, and it just wasn't. And then, like, later they released another game called RE-Verse that was also bad, that was a multiplayer game. Resident Evil 3, like, the team that made it, like, that made the remake, had, like, a year to make this game and make it as good as they possibly could. And for what they did, like, it is a brilliant game. Like, you could stretch out the gameplay to 4 hours just by wandering around and discovering things that you didn't previously know were there. Or, like, hear lines of dialogue you wouldn't previously. Carlos in the police station is one of my favorite bits of the game. Not only because it ceases to give me anxiety, but like because of all of the references he's making. Like you walk into the security office underneath the stairs in front of the RPD, and like one of the first things Carlos does, like when you go to the RPD, is like you have to fight Zombie Brad. And like if you take him down and then you go into that security office, sorry, it just gets me every time. And then you go to the security office, you'll see his poster and he just goes, sorry, poster boy. And it's funny. Like you go over to the locker, you see the police officer blues or like fatigues, whatever you want to call them. And he just goes, looks like somebody didn't have time to put his blues on. Like when you go inside, like Carlos has this really interesting and funny dialogue with most things there. Like if you run over to a door that has like the spade symbol on it in the main lobby, Carlos will go, here's a weird fucking door. And it's just great. Whenever he goes into the West office, you'll hear Carlos say things along the line of, like, first off, when he gets to see, like, the full banner of, like, welcome, Leon, he goes, yeah, welcome, Leon. Bet you had a real kick-ass first day. When he goes into the dark room and you find the cameras, he can interact with them, and, like, when he does, he'll say, if cameras killed these things, I'd be set. And it's literally an Easter egg that references Fatal Frame. Like, it's so cool. And I love moments like that in video games. They're just great. Or even the fact that the whole reason that the showers are so messed up in Resident Evil 2 are because of Carlos. Because Carlos ripped the... Because Carlos planted a C4 on the wall so he could get through to the STARS office because the hallway was blocked. So Carlos is the reason Leon has to find the valve in the first place. It's like, it's just good. Like, sure, there aren't always things in, like, remakes or, like, the games themselves, the original games themselves specifically, that would be indicative of, like, continuity that's perfect. And that's fine. Like, the continuity doesn't need to be perfect. I'm fine if it isn't. But it still brings me joy. Like, it still brings me that joy. And it's a great thing. And honestly, I can't imagine a world without that joy. Resident Evil 3 Remake has, like, it literally has so many things that could make it good, and it just isn't as good as it should be. The game is stunted by the fact that it's missing a special game mode to increase the lifespan of the game, and also is cut so short that you don't have nearly enough time for anything or to do anything. And I get that back in the day, these games were definitely, like, this short, but in the modern day, you can't make a game that has the Resident Evil name and make it that short and expect everything to be fine, because it's just not going to work. And I just find it upsetting for a number of reasons. Of course. And I just wish so desperately that it had an extra game mode. Just something, anything that could save the lifespan of the game. Because it has nothing to do that. And that is such a damn problem. Like Resident Evil 4, for instance. The original Resident Evil 4 released with Mercenary mode, but it didn't have separate ways. Because originally, Resident Evil 4 came out on the GameCube as a part of, like, the tail end of Capcom's exclusivity deal with Nintendo. And whenever they re-released it on PlayStation, they added separate ways, and on top of separate ways, they also added... Oh, dear God. Oh, no. Pardon? I must kill a zombie. But on top of Separate Ways, they also added the PRL, which is a laser gun that is I've used quite a bit since I unlocked it. You have to beat the game on professional to unlock the PRL. And it's honestly crazy. You feel like you're cosplaying as Mega Man like the whole time you use it because you kill anything it targets onto. It's insanity. But at the same time, the PRL makes the game trivial. It makes it too easy at times. And there are a lot of people who dislike the PRL because they're like, oh, well, it's literally just a thing that completely trivializes the game, makes it too easy, blah, blah, blah. And I get that. But then there are also people who were angry because the remake didn't have the PRL and were like going out of their way to say how bad the Resident Evil 4 remake was and then the only reason they would give is it doesn't have the PRL. This game fucking sucks. Like, come on. You're judging a game that is supposed to be a remake of the original version of the game. They added Separate Ways later, but when they did add Separate Ways later, it was like $10, if that. It was not a huge price. Like, it cost way less than any normal DLC would. And then we get it, and it's almost as full of a campaign as Leon's. Like, they added more content to Separate Ways. They made it better. And Mercenary Mode wasn't in the game on launch, but when they did release it, it was free, and it had a new character to play as. Like, you could play as Luis Serra, which is something that should have happened in the original too, but it didn't. I think that the key to Resident Evil games, aside from the story, is giving them that replayability. If you give them the replayability, you give them Mercenary Mode, which I alone have spent hours in Mercenary Mode just messing around because I can. Mercenary Mode is great. It is just a good time. And I can't really even state well enough how much I love Mercenary Mode. Mainly because, like, it's wave-based. Well, not really wave-based, because enemies just keep coming until you kill all of them. But it just makes you feel like a badass. You get to use a character who you didn't get to use in the game, possibly. But now you get to see, like, how sick their skill set is. You get to use their skill set against another enemy. Who wouldn't want that? Like, that's so cool. Like, Wesker shredding people in the remake. Like, his mayhem mode is he literally just puts his gun down and uses his hands. Like, when someone's ult is they use their hands, you should probably be terrified, because if they're using a gun instead of their hands, it's because they find their hands too powerful to use. Like, it's just classic anime shit. In the original game, like, Wesker, if you stunned enemies, he would just palm thrust them across the map and kill them. Like, it's so good. And honestly, like playing as Krauser in the original game versus playing as Krauser in the remake is very different. Like the polar difference. Because in the original, Krauser's main weapon is his bow and arrow. But in the remake, his main weapon is his submachine gun, his TMP. But in mercenary mode, you should always use Krauser's knife because the game rewards you for using his knife. His melee attacks are so much stronger that like using his knife is just, it's rewarded because you rip through enemies with melee attacks. You could get a 150 kill streak, killing all 150 of the enemies in mercenary mode as Krauser with melee attacks. Plus, in the original, Krauser just had a thing where he would dash, and every enemy within that vicinity would die. That was his ult. His mayhem mode is he has two arms that are like that, and like you can just swing them around or choose to dash. And so on and so forth. Like even though, like I said, even though mercenary mode was not in the game on launch, they literally give it to you for free. So like there was no reason for people to complain about it. I mean, sure, it did take time, but once they got it, like, it was done. And honestly, like, 3 not having any sort of like long-term sustainability because it didn't have that extra game mode is what killed the game. Because there are people that for them it is their favorite Resident Evil game. If it is your favorite Resident Evil game, good for you. I'm happy that you love the game. I just, as much as I do love it, like there are times where it felt like the developers had no choice but to make AI brain dead because they were running out of time. And like if you play the remake and you fight Nemesis on Inferno or Nightmare, it like makes you like it just makes you depressed. Because the way they designed him for Nightmare and Inferno is it's all RNG. Like, you don't know if he's going to hit you. But if he does, you're gonna suffer. Because, quite literally, if he hits you once, you will die because he's just gonna stun lock you with that first hit, and then you just get hit 2 more times consecutively, and you're dead. That's it. And I had to fight Nemesis twice on Inferno because on Inferno there's no autosave. And the last time I saved was right before the final boss, and I accidentally missed when I was doing the final section against Nikolai, so it made me restart from before the boss fight. And well, when I say I've never felt so much rage, like, I thought I was going to have an aneurysm. It was a bad time. Like, I know now why they call the Platinum so long Raccoon City. It's because after you get the Platinum, you don't want to play the game anymore. Like, that's just what it is. Like, as much as I love and enjoy Resident Evil, I don't think, like, past doing the series, I don't think I will make another, like, I don't think I will make another attempt to play through Resident Evil 3 Remake because that game is so heinous. Like, it just makes me sad. So, like, it's just not viable. for me. Like, I saw So Long RC, and I was just like, you're damn right, So Long RC, because I don't ever want to touch this game again. I ended up with every character model or monster model. Like, I ended up with every concept art unlocked. I had done every record in the game. Like, it's insanity what I accomplished in that game over the course of a few days. But at the same time, again, I can't recommend anybody buy the game by itself because I don't feel like it would be a game anybody would get their money's worth out of. I recommend that if you get that game, make sure it's a part of the pack of like Resident Evil 2 Remake and 4 Remake, because that is the only time that it will be worth it, because you're getting two quality games that have so many hours of gameplay, and then you're getting a game that is fun to run through maybe once or twice. And maybe if you're a sociopath like me, like 7 times in 2 days. But yeah, it I think I've only been that frustrated with a platinum like one other time. And it wasn't even the fact that the remake had a hard platinum to get. It was the fact that the remake didn't have a hard platinum to get, and it still made me angry. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand how something can cause me so much rage when I want to love it so deeply. Because I do, just with my whole heart, love Resident Evil. But that game, dear God, that game, it is so bad on so many levels sometimes. Like, it has mechanics that are amazing, and then it has other mechanics that just do not work and are just not great. Like, I found, like, one of the infinite ammo weapons, the Raiden, I found very interesting. I found it cool. Like, it's a weapon that specifically targets weak spots. If you miss the weak spot, however, it just is null because it just doesn't work. Which is fair. Like, I can live with that. But at the same time, like, there are enemies that it will not target. Like, it's very finicky about what it considers to be a weak spot. There are spider enemies that are gross and vile in the 3 remake. Those spider enemies, for some reason, are, after a few shots, immune to the gun. I understand, but I don't like it. Because the gun is just null and void. I did like an entire run with that gun. I had to switch to a different weapon when I was in the power substation just so I wouldn't have to deal with the spiders. Because they irritate the hell out of me. Other than that, though, like, it even works on bosses sometimes. Like, you can target a weak spot of a boss and just shred them with it. And I think that's cool. Like, that's fun. Like, even, like, infinite ammo handgun, I think it was the MUP, or, like, infinite ammo assault rifle, which is just the assault rifle you have as Carlos, just infinite ammo. Infinite ammo rocket launcher is always a fun and interesting thing to add to a game for when you want to do a speed run and, like, you don't feel like suffering. And again, I get it, but at the same time, Why pain and suffering? Like, why? Like, there was a period of my life where I legit played Dark Souls games because I was a masochist. I had a bunch of friends that were just like, "Oh, you need to play this cool game, man." And I'm like, "What is it?" And they just said, "It's called Dark Souls." So I gave it a shot. It awakened something in me. And by that, I mean, it awakened the part of me that hated breezing through games. Because, don't get me wrong, that is a part of me, and I can be very stubborn when it comes to a game I'm playing. To such a point where I will make myself suffer simply because I can't handle the fact that that I haven't got past it yet. So, I go out of my way to fight a boss, even though I shouldn't. I will go out of my way to get good, as they call it. And I got really good at this thing that I call playing through the rage. And you basically get so pissed off that you hyper focus. And you just succeed because you've gotten so angry. Which also helped me in Elden Ring when I fought. I believe it's Melania? I think that's the name. It's been a while since I've played. I beat the game, got the stars ending, and then I just have not been back to it yet. But I got most of the trophies just in my first run of the game. So, like, most of the trophies I'm missing currently are all based around, like, the legendary stuff, like the legendary equipment that you need to collect. But anyways, I've gotten off track. Like, there's a part of me that loves that pain, that loves playing games and going through in that capacity. But even I could admit it's not a healthy thing to do. But it is what we do. People who love those types of games, it is what we do. And, like, people can try to deny it, but they know it's true. Like, they actively know that it's the truth. It's an itch you can't scratch unless you play a Souls game, and it's a problem. Miyazaki just keeps sucking people in, and it just happens, you know. But it's just with Resident Evil, of course, it's a different feeling. Than it is with, like, Dark Souls. It's just what I'm saying is I get why people dive in and are like, okay, I'm gonna make myself suffer today. I'm just saying it's just not always the move. It's not always the solution. Alright. Well, that's it for my ranting and just mellowing out for the time being. I'll do another one sometime and just have a good old time. But until then, I'm Violet, and just have a good time, guys.